Hey there guys, welcome back to our Node.js crash course, and in this video we'll be diving into Node.js modules. Understanding modules is crucial for building scalable and maintainable applications in Node.js. It's become a crucial part of the ecosystem to make code more usable and readable. So we're just going to get started with this. So modules literally are just like Node.js files, and how we arrange them and how they work with each other is quite important. And there are different types of modules, which I'll be going through very shortly. And the fundamental part of modules, the fundamental function of modules is they allow you to break down your code into manageable chunks, each responsible for a specific piece of functionality. And this kind of way that Node.js is built helps to promote code reusability and maintainability, as well as readability. So just to make things simple, every file in Node.js is a module. These modules interact with each other by importing each other and exporting certain functions or properties or methods or anything really from itself. That'll make more sense when I start coding it. I don't want to talk too much on that. Before I go into modules, I want to talk about the types of modules. There are different types of modules in Node.js. Let me just go ahead and clear this hello world code here. So I'm just I usually create an info.txt when I do my tutorials, just so that this will be handy in GitHub for you guys to download. So basically, what are the types of modules? There is the core module. And what are core modules really? Well, these are built-in modules in Node.js. You don't require any form of additional installation to make these work. You don't require any installation. It just inbuilt in the system, right? Totally inbuilt. And there are a couple examples. So we'll be going much deeper into them. Before I list the examples, which I will in a few seconds, the other type of module is, the custom module, right? The ones we make ourselves. The Node.js files we make ourselves are modules, right? And the files we make ourselves. Let's write that real quickly, right? And then the third type of modules, ones we get from other users online through the Node Package Manager. And I'll be going through what the Node Package Manager, or NPM, is later in this video. So, but before we go into here, let's cover these module types one after the other. So what are core modules? Basically, as I said before, they don't require any additional installation. They come baked in with Node.js already. Once you have Node.js, you have access to these modules. What are some examples of these modules, right? We have the file system module called the FS module, which is used to create, read, delete a file and directory, right? This is the purpose of the file system in Node.js. So we have access to this FS module, which I'll show you a short example of how to use shortly. And there's the HTTP module, which is used for creating servers. We'll get into this later in the course. And there's the path module, which is used to locate paths in directories. Basically, it's used to make the searching for a file path or a directory path an easier task, right? We'll get into that as well. And then there's OS. There's several more, but OS is used for the it's getting information from the operating system. So there are a lot more than this. It's just like a couple common examples. There's also crypto, which is not used for crypto coins, but used to like generate like random characters. And there are many more than this, but I'll just stop here. And I'll be showing you how exactly we use these core modules. Awesome. So right now I'm going back into my server.js and I'm going to use one of these core modules. Okay, I'm going to use FS. Let me just say that, the file system module. And of course, this is just a comment here. So How do I make use of the fs module? This is a standard way of importing modules in Node.js. You first of all declare a variable by using const. In this case, I'm going to bring in the fs module, and then I'll set this equal to require and put a string in there, fs. So what this does is it exposes this fs module and saves it into this variable called fs, and then we have access to all the properties and methods that fs has to offer. So let's say we want to read a file. Conveniently, we have info.txt here to read. So let's say we want to read a file. How do we read this file? Well, the quickest way to go about it is to say fs.read file. And we put in the path of the file, which in this case, since we are in the same directory, I can just say do a relative path and say info.txt. Don't forget this / to make sure it's a relative path. And then this has a callback function, or before we type in the callback function, we need to make sure we type in the pattern basically of how I want it, the format, that's the right word, of how I want the text to be printed out. Because if we don't add this format, it's going to be printed out in binary form, I believe so. So after we type in UTF-8 format, which is actual readable, human readable format, we want to then type in the callback function. What is this callback function for? This callback function is a function that executes when indeed the info.txt has been read successfully, and it takes in two arguments or parameters, whatever you want to call them. The first parameter is the error parameter. That's if there's an error in reading the file, it exposes this error parameter, and by default the error is null. But then if there is an error, it has I believe a class of error, no exception, here. We don't need to bother about this class, but just know that if it has an error, this populates. And then if it doesn't have an error and has a data, we have the data there as well. Awesome. So the first thing we do here is if there's an error, if error exists, if it's not equal to null, if we have this, we can just say return console.error and pass the error there. And this usually throws an error if this file does not exist, right? And then it just returns. But if there's no error, I can just console.log data. Right now, what is going on here, just to recap, is it's importing this fs module, which exposes all the methods, especially the read file method of the fs module, which enables us to read a file and display the contents of the file in the terminal. Awesome. So let's go ahead and run this code. I guess we remember how to run the Node.js code. Just type in node and then the name of the file, which is server in this case. No need to add .js. You can just do it like that. I'm going to press node server. You see, we get the contents of info.txt printed out, which is pretty cool, right? So this is one example of using a core module. Of course, we'll go much deeper into the fs module in the next video, but this is just an example of using a core module in Node.js. Now let's talk about the other type of module in Node.js, which is the custom module, and which simply means it's a module that you can create on your own. The whole purpose of this is it allows you to encapsulate and organize your code in an effective and readable manner for, if you're working in a team, it needs to be readable and effective. And so that you don't have like a billion functions in your one Node.js file, and you can just segment your code into having multiple functions pretty much. So we're going to make our own module here. And to do that, just to show you the whole importance of this, I'm going to go back to server.js. I'm going to clear all of these, right? And then I'm going to make a new folder here. Just follow me. I'm going to call this folder functions, right? And inside of this functions folder, I'm going to create our first module. I'm going to call this module math.js. to expose certain mathematical functions for us. right? This is going to be a file that I want to be able to import the same way I imported fs and expose certain functions in the file. So just clear this again. Now I'm in math.js and I'm going to make a function. I'm going to call this function add, and it's going to take in two arguments, a, comma, b. And a and b are going to be numbers. And this add function is going to return the summation or the addition of these two numbers, a and b. So I'm going to say return a plus b. Awesome. I'm going to make another function here called function subtract a comma b. And this does something similar, returns the subtraction of a and b. I'm going to make two more functions real quick here. Go to call this other function multiply a comma b as well, and return, of course, the multiplication of a and b, and then another function called divide, which returns the division of a and b. Awesome. And so we have all these functions here, right? And I'm gonna add one more thing here. Before I add that one more thing, I want to show you a common mistake people make when trying to make a module to be used. So obviously I want to make a math module, right? I call this the same way I brought in fs. I'll say const math is equal to require. And then in this case, I can't just say math or anything like that. I need to find the actual file, which is going to be, I'm going to use a relative path here and say I'm going to go into the functions folder and I'm going to go to the math folder, right? I'll just rename this to be my math module, right? And let's say I want to use the math module now. And I'll say, I know I have an add function here. So I'm just going to say const, I'll say console.log. I'll say math module dot add 2 plus 2. And this is going to give us an error. We're going to, okay, this is going to be my math, my bad. It's going to give us an error. It's going to fail. And I'll tell you why it's going to fail in a second. Because obviously we have the add function here, right? We should technically be able to do dot add 2 plus 2. But if I run this and say node server again, you see I get an error. Math module.add is not a function. Why is that? Well, it's simply because we did not export any of these functions from this particular module. And to be able to use a function in a module, we should be able to export it. And this is very important because you may not want certain functions to be exported out of your file, or you may want all functions to be exported out of your file. So how do you make that work? There's a very simple way to do this. Of course, you can just say module, which tells Node.js that you want to export these functions in this file or module dot exports, and you make this equal to an object literal that says add to add, subtract, multiply. Sorry, my bad. Multiply is multiply, and I misspelled subtract, my bad. Subtract here, multiply, and divide. And if this seems repetitive, it's because we're not using the ES6 shortcut here, which enables us to take away any repetitive key and value naming conventions. So we just take this one out, we take this one out, we take this one out, and we take this one out. It is the exact same thing. Nothing is going to be broken here. Now that we've done that, you can see that even our VS Code IntelliSense now recognizes that there is a method in the module here called add. And if we try to restart the server, restart the system again, if we try to rerun the code by saying node server, we see we get not a number. Why do we get not a number? Of course we get not a number because it's not 2 plus 2. You guys probably saw that. My bad. It's 2, 2. Let me just run node server again. We get 4, right? So 2 comma 2 is 4. And that's because the add method takes in two numbers and adds them up. And this is a very simple example, of course. I'm not trying to complicate things here. I'm using this example so you can understand how simple it is to actually import a module, So there's that. So this has been the custom module part of things. It's fairly easy. Just to go over it again, we define the file we want to use the functions with, add the functions or properties. I can also add properties here and say something like const username is equal to clem, and I can export it here as well. And I can also decide to console.log it. I can say console.log my math module.username. And if I run the code again, I get, my bad, node server. I get 4 and I get clem. And of course, I can also do the subtract, I can do the multiply, I can do the divide methods as well. And we should get what we expect. 2 plus 2 is 4, 2 minus 2 is 0, 2 multiplied by 2 is 4 as well, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. So all our methods are working perfectly. Awesome. So the final part here of modules in Node.js is, of course, the Node Package Manager, or NPM. And what NPM is, it allows you to install and manage external modules. These are modules that are not in your file system. They're not in your directory here, and they're not in the Node.js core module list. It allows you to get packages externally that someone, probably part of a community member, has published online as a Node package module. We'll be going over that sometime later in this course, of course, but we have access to this large ecosystem of packages online that we can just download and install externally. So far, we've not needed to install anything externally, but right now we're going to be installing a pretty useful package right now. So the package we're going to be installing right now is called nodejs. It's a very helpful package that people often use in their large-scale production-level projects, which enables people to easily manipulate arrays and objects. I personally do not use nodejs because I pretty much don't download a package unless I really need it, because it's better to keep your code light and not heavy with all these different packages. But it is something helpful that people have been using for several years at this point, and it's a very secure package. Another thing is some packages have security risks, but not a lot, and I don't want to scare you from downloading packages. Of course, you do need packages in large-scale projects, but if you can do something without a package, better to do something without a package. If it's not really saving much of your time, no need to use that package. But of course, I digress. Nodejs is a very useful package, and we're going to be downloading it right now. And how exactly do we download Nodejs? I'll just clear the terminal now. And this is how you download a package from NPM. This is how it's done. So you just, first of all, you type in NPM, give a space, install, and you type in Nodejs. Before, a couple years ago, you needed to type --save for that to work. You don't need to do that anymore. And before, I think I'm even jumping the gun a bit. Before you even do this, you need to actually initialize your NPM file. And how do you do that? You do npm init. And what this npm file is, it keeps track of all the packages that you have downloaded on your system, so that when you want to deploy it to production, your production server knows what to install. It doesn't make a lot of sense right now, but this is essential to do first before we install any package. So when I type in npm space init and press enter, it's going to ask me a couple of questions. What's my package name? By default, it says this. I'm just going to go with the default suggestions, version 1.0.0, description, a crash course on Node.js. You can also choose to leave this empty if you want to. Entry point server.js doesn't really matter. You can leave it at that. Right now mine is server.js, so that is fine. You can change this to whatever you want to, of course. I'm not going to have any test command, no git repo, no keywords. Author, I'll say Deba or clem. And license, nope. Then it asks you, is this okay? Because this is going to be the content of your node package file, pretty much. So I'll type in enter for yes. And then what happens is it creates a package.json here in our file list. And we can go into it here. We can go into the file here and we can see this is how the file is formed. And there are a couple of more things we can add to this. I won't go too deeply into that right now, but just the npm init actually makes us to be able to set a structure to start installing other files externally using npm. It's a very, very important thing to learn. So of course, as I said before, we're going to be installing Lodash. So this is how it is done. We say npm. After we have initialized our npm package.json file, I say npm install Lodash. That's what the file is called, Lodash. And we'll just press enter. Takes a little bit, and then you can see it added a new dependencies key here to the JSON file. And this is the latest version. Of course, if you want to install a lesser version, you can use npm install Lodash at 3, but we're not going to go into that right now. I'm just saying you can install whatever version you like. Most times you want to use the latest version, so we're just going to go ahead with this. So I'm going to go back to server.js. I'm going to clear this previous code from here. We don't need it anymore. I'm going to clear this math and clear info.txt. And yeah, just going to leave that there. Clear package.json as well. Awesome. So we want to make use of Lodash right now. And to import Lodash, we say const, and the convention generally of using Lodash, you don't need to do this, but the convention is to name the Lodash module an underscore. And we just require it like we require a module from Node.js. We call this Lodash, right? You can name this Lodash or whatever you want to call it, but I'm just going with the general community ecosystem convention here, which is to call it an underscore. Perfect. So what are the things we can do with Lodash? We can do some array manipulations, of course. I can just say const. I can just define an array of numbers and say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I can say I want to reverse the numbers, right? Say const reverse numbers is equal to, we call the Lodash module. And once we have the Lodash module, we are exposed to all the functions that Lodash has to offer, right? So we can then reverse, right? And we pass in the array of numbers, but this may not be very obvious. Arrays are reference types. They're not regular numbers or strings. They are not static types like those. They are reference types. So we need to copy them to make them distinct. So we're going to copy the numbers array by spreading it. We can't just put numbers like this because it's still referencing the original numbers. So the best thing to do is to copy it and spread it into the reverse method here. So what this does is it reverses the numbers and then saves it in the reverse numbers variable as a distinct variable from the numbers variable. There's no more references and anything like that. Maybe I'll create a new video talking more deeply about reference types. But for now, we'll move ahead because this is not a deep JavaScript course. So let me just console.log. I'm going to console log the original array, and I'm going to use template strings. Original numbers will be numbers, and I'm just going to copy this line, and reverse numbers will be reverse numbers. Awesome. If you're wondering how I'm copying lines very quickly, of course, I just put my cursor on the line I want to copy, hold my shift and hold my alt for Windows users, and press the down button to copy down. But for Mac users, I hold my shift and I hold my option and I press down to copy the same content to the next line. For those that don't know that, but that's beyond the scope of this video. I'm just going to go ahead right now. So we have our file complete. We have the one use case of this Lodash, which exposes all the functions like reverse from the Lodash module. And we're going to run this file right now. And by saying node server. We can see that we have the original number saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the reverse number saying 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Of course, there are many more functions to Lodash. I would allow you to experience them, read more about it in the Lodash documentation, but I'm not going to go so deeply into that because that's not the core part of the course. I'm just trying to show you that, of course, you can download many more modules. There's so many NPM modules online, countless really. There's Axios, there is Faker.js to create Access is used to like make API requests, which we'll talk about shortly. Faker is just to make random names. There's even a package called random names. So it goes crazy because literally the entire community is part of this large ecosystem that helps to create, multiple helpful packages for people that need things done quickly, pretty much. So yeah, that is pretty much it for the video on Node.js modules. I know I rambled there for a bit. I hope you were able to fully understand every single part of the concepts. It's important to go deep into these concepts in your journey to understand how to make reusable and maintainable code for Node.js. So we've covered core modules, custom modules, and how to use npm to install external packages. In the next video, we will dive into file system modules and explore file operations in Node.js. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below, and thanks for watching. It's been fun.